Welcome to Mind, America's Lignite Energy Podcast, brought to you by the Lignite Energy Council of North Dakota. Here's your hosts, Kate Muggerud and Jeff Simon.
All right, welcome everyone to Mind, Lignite Energy in America. We are happy to have you. We are really excited getting into another episode here this week. We have a great guest with you. We kind of discussed some of the things we're going to talk about here in this episode a little bit in the first season, but we brought on the expert, the go-to on Project Tundra. That's something that you may have heard or you may remember from season one. Glad to have you guys with us as our listeners and now our viewers, doing it a little different this season. You guys, I have my wonderful co-host, Jeff Simon. Jeff, thanks for being here again today.
Hi.
And everyone, I am so happy to introduce Stacy Dahl. Stacy is just been fantastic to visit with, and I'm so happy to have her on the show. But Stacy works for Minnkota Power Cooperative. She's the manager of external affairs, based up in Grand Forks, North Dakota. So Stacy, welcome and thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
I know, Stacy, you and I kind of tried to connect a little bit in that season one, and I had several guests on the show who were talking about the technology and talking a little bit about Project Tundra, and it got me really excited. So I am so happy to have you on the show today to kind of explain to everyone what you got going on. So talk to me a little bit about Project Tundra.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you again. We always love talking about this project because it really is exciting and it is very bold. So the opportunity that we might have the world's largest carbon capture plant here in North Dakota is really exciting, and that we can help lead the world, not just our region, but the world in this type of technology has just been absolutely wonderful to work on. So the project itself has been in consideration for about 5 years in different stages of development, and we have, in research partnership with the tremendous scientists at UNDZ ERC, we have made a lot of gains on the technical side. So there's really, when you think about it, there's two components to capturing CO2. You have to capture it at the plant, and then you have to store it in a sink. And that might sound easy, but there's a lot that goes into it, and they have been our partners every step of the way.
And just to interrupt you there, Stacy, for our listeners now, the carbon capture, this is an emerging technology, right? I mean, this is something that is cutting edge.
It is, although some of the technology is very well understood because it's been around for decades. So, for example, on the capture island, when you pull that flue gas instead of releasing it into the atmosphere, you pull it straight from the plant. So the coal plant still looks the same on the front end. You're just taking that gas on the back end, and then you're applying what's called an amine into that flue gas. And amines have been around for decades, and they're very well understood. And that's actually really important because utilities love certainty, and we want to know the rules of the road, and we want to understand how technology works before we go and build big projects like this. So what we didn't know when we started this was how does that amine technology work on lignite flue gas, because lignite can have some unique components to it that make it a challenge at times. So that's where that research partnership was really important with UND. So we have spent a lot of time testing that flue gas, and as a part of that have gained a lot of confidence on the ability of amines to work on North Dakota lignite. So that's a big part of the research and development to this point. Now on the capture island, we're looking at actually designing that facility, which is a major step. And so we're determining what materials and at what scale and at what volume. And so this gets to be a very specific and technical part of the project. And so that's the capture side of it. And then the sink part of it is equally exciting, particularly if you talk to the geologists. This is what, you know, this is what they live to do. And so, given that our state primarily occupies that Williston Basin, we have unique geology here that is a real opportunity and not present everywhere in the world. But this big basin, as UND's scientists describe it, is very vanilla, and that's good because that means it's very stable. And that means when you inject CO2 back into the subsurface, it's very stable, and we don't see tectonic activity or activity in the subsurface that would induce seismicity or seismic events. So we have a lot of confidence on that side as a result from our work with UND. And so from a technical perspective, we're in a great place. We're still finishing up our work and on the research side, but we're also in parallel path developing the business part of this project. So you can have all the best science in the world, and we think that we have it here. But at the same time, you need to make a business case, and that's what we're focusing on in parallel path.
You mentioned EERC, Stacy, as an important partner in this project. Department of Energy has been engaged as well on the business side, helping out financially, because this is cutting edge stuff, and I don't think any business would be expected to foot the bill, the capital investment to develop this kind of technology. So the Department of Energy has been an important component of this as well.
Yeah, absolutely. The Department of Energy, the state of North Dakota, has made significant contributions to this project as well. So exactly to your point, Jeff, you have to have federal and state support to make these projects work. And it's not unlike, for example, renewable technology, which has and still has a lot of state and federal support that go into energy development, because particularly with energy intensive and capital intensive projects like this, we're looking at $1 billion project to build this capture island and subsequent sink for the CO2. To give you a sense, Minnkota's total asset value is between $1 and $1.5 billion. So there is no way a private company can take on that level of debt and risk, and that's so important. But we've also seen too in other examples where government grants and aid and support really help drive down the costs of these projects, and that's the path that we're looking for. We want to build Tundra so that the next plant can build it cheaper, and the next plant can build it cheaper, and that's how we continue to lead in this space, is by taking what's already been done, building upon that, making it more efficient, capturing more, and doing more with that CO2.
We talked about this just before you went on. We started this podcast here, or webinar, whatever you want to call it. The cooperative has actually been employing a drilling rig, not drilling for oil, but you've been drilling a test hole project in nearby Oliver County, just nearby the plant, and you were saying that's kind of ahead of schedule, really.
Yeah,
What did
it's
you
really
learn?
exciting. It's for electric cooperative to be to have a drilling rig under their name is new territory. That's not generally our been in our wheelhouse in the past, but it's as part of this process and part of that state support that we've received. UND and EERC has been doing a lot of work in the subsurface, really examining where we're proposing to sink the CO2. So they've done some seismic work to really understand what those different layers look like and how well they can receive and hold that CO2. And the drilling is really a confirmation of everything that they think they already know. And so in the process of drilling, we're removing core and evaluating those layers. So we drilled all the way down to the Precambrian layer, which is 10,000 feet below the surface. If you can wrap your mind around 10,000 feet, it's just tremendous. And so there's 3 potential storage zone layers in there. So we're pulling all of that rock and sending it to the labs for analysis to make sure and confirm everything that we think we already know. And so we had a wonderful crew on that project, and they were so good at their job. They were finished about 10 or so days early. And that's pretty great. So that's the first well, and there's another one to be drilled not very far away, just another couple miles away this fall, late summer, early fall.
Well, that is stinking cool. I mean, kind of wrapping my brain around that is just hard to get there. That's pretty great. Now, just quick.
Oh yeah, no, some of that rock is 540 million years old. So
that's just crazy to think about. I mean, how? Just right to refresh our listeners here. When was Project Tundra started? How long has this been in the works?
That's a great question, because I think it really speaks to the evolution of this technology. So back in 2015, Minnkota was approached about being simply a host site for this amine-based technology by a company called NRG in Texas. And if you know about NRG's Petronova project, they now have the largest carbon capture project in the world. And it is a 240 megawatt slipstream on a 650 megawatt coal unit down there. And at the time, that was a 10-fold scale up of what had been done before. And what we're proposing to do in Tundra is capture twice what they are capturing now at Petronova. So you can see how we're getting better and we're capturing more CO2 as this technology evolves. So we were originally approached by this company to simply be a host site, and we wanted to know more. And when you look at all that has happened since 2015, we had the Clean Power Plan that came out and nearly wiped out half of North Dakota's coal-based generation. You know, it would have been the early 2020s that we would have had to start taking generation offline in North Dakota. So it, I think, heightened our focus on a technology-based approach. And so we are one of the utilities in the world that still believes you need coal in the mix. And we are an all of the above company. We have a lot of wind resources, and we're proud of that. And we have hydro, and we're proud of that. But lignite remains the backbone of our system. And we believe that going forward, it has a really important role to play, not only for our members, but in our region, where we get a lot of extreme weather. And we plan for those scenarios as a utility. We have to be on and working when it's 70 degrees and when it's 30 below. So we have to plan for everything in between, and coal really is the backbone of that strategy.
Stacey, when you talk about carbon dioxide, you're in this instance looking at disposal storage, basically. But there's also in North Dakota, obviously, somewhere down the road here, enhanced oil recovery opportunities using carbon dioxide. Is that a component now, or is that a component maybe in the future to look at, or where are you at with that?
Yeah, we hope that that's a part of our project's future. We're seeing, I know Denbury is bringing CO2 from outside of the state into the southwest corner of North Dakota, and they have plans to do that, and that's good. But my ultimate dream is to see North Dakota-based CO2 sources synced with North Dakota-based petroleum resources. And I think that's the best of all worlds for our state. And so we hope that's where we go for Project Tundra. We haven't seen perfect alignment at this point. And of course, given the volatility within oil and gas, that's probably some measure of the way off. But I will say the biggest hurdle is getting those CO2 capture facilities built. And we really do think if we build this, we will find a CO2 EOR opportunity. It's, going back to the technology discussion, they've been doing enhanced oil recovery for decades in Texas, safely and very effectively. I think the last I saw, the Petronova project had rejuvenated an old oil field and increased production 1,300 times what it had been producing. And if we can think about all that oil that's trapped in place in North Dakota in those legacy fields, there's so much opportunity. And we hope that our project gets there. With the 45Q tax credit, which is really the federal driver for these projects at the moment, we are planning for making this project work economically with that credit alone. But it would be, we all hope that we get to that enhanced oil recovery scenario. There's too much value to North Dakota to not pursue that opportunity.
Yeah, just like coal, I think we're going to need oil for a long time into the future.
Yeah.
So
We agree.
we can tap more of North Dakota's resource, great for the economy and a great synergy between coal and oil and gas.
Yes, absolutely. And I know the scientists at EERC are really working hard on cracking that last nut, which is using CO2 in those Bakken wells. And we'll get there. We just need a little more time. So that I think will unleash all kinds of opportunity for many within the state.
When you talked a little bit about at the beginning about how, and this was something when I interviewed actually a couple guests from the EERC last season and just kind of, trying to understand this technology a little bit better. And they said something that you did about how this is not a national or state presence, a national presence, but really what we're doing is it's having a worldwide presence and people are paying attention all across the globe, and how cool that is to be North Dakota and having that and these eyes on us and what we're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Really the center of leading this pioneering effort, I think leads right through North Dakota. I absolutely do believe that. And, it's not getting easier to navigate, energy markets and regulatory fronts and all of those things. So when you look at the opportunity to use technology to solve all of those challenges, that's where our focus needs to be. And whether you're someone who believes we're releasing too much CO2 into the atmosphere and that we need to curb emissions, this has the equivalent of taking 600 to 800,000 cars off the road every year. We're capturing almost 4 million, between 3 and 4 million tons of CO2 a year. So those are the meaningful reductions you can make. And if you look at any of the international climate modeling data, carbon capture, utilization, and storage is a key component to reaching those goals. So whether it's finding a viable path for coal in the future for our petroleum resources, or if it's climate that's on the top of the list, CCUS is a really key part of that future.
Oh, yeah, that's just really cool to hear and makes you proud to kind of be from North Dakota. So that's wonderful. I love that. So what do you see in terms of, these upcoming, we've talked about the last 5 years, really where are we at now, and what do we have coming up here in the next few years?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're not only pursuing, as I mentioned, the finishing stages of the research and development. There's a little more to do, but we're really kind of ending or approaching our wrap-up phase for that. So now it's on to designing the capture island. So then we know exactly how much that costs, and going through the permitting process for the sink. And so there's air permits, water, storage permits. It's not for the faint of heart.
No, not at all.
Very complicated projects. But I would say the biggest part of this project that's yet to be developed is the business side of it. So we need that final guidance from IRS. We have the proposed rules. We need them to make some changes to those, and then we need to go out and develop those business structures that allows us to use those tax credits and leverage them in the same way renewable projects have. And so there are business structures out there that will allow us to do that. But if we're sequestering 4 million tons of CO2 per year, the value of that tax credit is upwards of $2 billion of value, which is great. Wow. But you need to find somebody that can help you leverage those kinds of dollars. And that's where obviously there's a lot of complexity.
Yeah, absolutely. When you talk about numbers like that, you want to make sure that you're crossing all your T's and you're dotting all your I's. So that can understandably be a little bit of time that you need to do so.
Just to follow up, Stacy, on that you need a partner basically, because it's tough for a nonprofit cooperative to take credit for a tax credit, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of what we talk about.
Exactly. Yes, we don't have a large taxable liability, and so we can't the lion's share of those tax credits we can't use. And again, that is true back to renewable energy projects, and a lot of those equity partnership models that have been used before might look similar, and there's a lot more complexity with a wind deal than a carbon capture deal. But this is, I give a lot of credit to the congressional leaders that helped this tax credit move forward, because this is what we need for our industry to move forward.
Yeah, absolutely. So when a little bit about the partnerships that you have, with the EERC, is that kind of, I know that when I was visiting with a couple of our guests from there, they were talking about how there's so many different players within a project like this and a project of this size. I can't even imagine how many nuances and how difficult it might be at times to kind of get that collaboration between all these different agencies.
We've been really lucky, and so certainly it is complex, and there are not only the DOE, the state of North Dakota that has supported this, but certainly EERC, and then there's a lot of vendors who help supply services, and that in addition to the permitting. And I'm a lawyer by training, and so I love the lawyers, but there's a lot of lawyers too, and so it is a whole it is a whole complex partnership, but we've been really lucky because we've been able to keep the ball moving forward in a very substantial way.
That's really cool. Someone last season, when you talked about the geologists and kind of their role that they've played in this too, I can say this, I guess, but how they like to kind of geek out on this technology and how interesting it is. So is there, when you see this moving forward, is there still a role for for like our geologists to be playing in this? Or are we strictly at the point now where we're like, okay, this is good, we got this, now we need to get to this business aspect of it?
Yeah, and so there will always be a role for geologists. And by the way, storing 4 million tons of CO2 in the subsurface is like their Super Bowl. So, this is so exciting.
Right.
To them. But there's always more to know and ways to do it better. And we're entering into the next phase of a big project that EERC is undertaking called Carbon Safe. And so they're helping us define this big storage zone within the site we're proposing to sink our CO2. So that will take place and take shape over the next few years. And a lot of that data is going to go into the permits that we need. So there's great alignment there as well. And I really mean it when I say we could not have done this project without their help.
Yeah, I mean, that's the same phrase that I heard resonate from all the members over at the ERC as well about yourself and kind of what your role plays too. So it's really cool to see the collaboration between so many different agencies working together towards the same goal. I mean, that's not something you typically see, especially in kind of our world today. So it's something to be proud of, I think.
I'll just say one other thing too, which is, the state of North Dakota has really stepped up their support of these projects and developing this technology. And I remember it was a particularly tough budget cycle back in 2017 when they really established the Advanced Energy Fund that we really needed at the time, and that I think others have benefited from. But there's a lot of leadership at the state level, and there's a lot of credit to a lot of folks who are helping us row the boat in the same direction.
Yeah, which is
just
critical.
See how it all comes together.
Yeah.
Really project. I mean, North Dakota right on the cutting edge, and a great project to try to preserve and extend the life of our lignite industry here. I think it's fantastic.
It's very important to us, and we know it's we have 800 years of coal in North Dakota. We have to find a way forward with utilizing that resource that we have.
Yeah. You talked about how you work with different technologies, wind, and then just specifically for Project Tundra with this coal and now lignite. Talk to me a little bit about how that plays obviously an important role in it, but what makes that lignite, that coal, unique to this project?
Yeah, we have some really interesting constituencies in North Dakota coal. So there's a lot more water in the coal than in other even coal types. So the Petronova project in Texas used subbituminous coal, and lignite is so full of water that we actually have to essentially burn more of it to get the same energy output. And so that's a challenge. And in addition to that, we have a lot of sodium actually in our fuel, which in the combustion process can create all kinds of issues. And so that's why you want to be especially careful because it's expensive to use this amine product on the flue gas. So you have to really understand what your flue gas looks like and how the amine works in that stream before you go and build these projects. And so we have, I think in other environmental regulation cases, because lignite is so different from other coal types, we've even been distinguished differently in other circumstances under the recognition that this is a very different type of coal. But that said, it's so important that we pursue this application of lignite, because when you look around the world, over half of the world's coal reserves are low rank coals like lignite, And so if you can demonstrate that this technology works here on this coal, you can move it to those other places of the world that are using those low rank coals.
Put those chemical engineers to the test to figure out what
Yeah.
the influences are in the flue gas, right? I mean, not just
The
geologists.
lawyers generally try to stay away from the engineers, but in this case, there are.
I'm impressed as a lawyer, though. You know a lot about chemistry, though, Stacy. That's pretty good.
you just pick it up, but it's fascinating. It's really fascinating.
That's awesome. Very cool. Well, now, Stacy, where can our viewers go to learn more about Project Tundra?
Yes, thank you for asking that. We have a project website. It's www.projecttundrand.com. And I would love it if people will go and particularly learn more about how CO2 is stored in the subsurface, because we really want the public to understand how safe this is and how effectively it stores that CO2. So there's some really great resources on there, as well as a video from the scientists themselves. So it's one thing for me to talk about science, but to hear it from the scientists themselves about why this is safe and why this is effective, I think is really powerful.
Yeah, that's a great point that you bring that up, because I know from my standpoint, going into this, in partnership with the Lignite Energy Council, I had no understanding. I was coming in at a baseline knowledge of this world. And so, where I was coming from, you have certain ideas that you think, well, might be not great for the environment, and then you learn about all these, and I've been interviewing all these amazingly smart, brilliant people, engineers, chemists, people who are really behind that technology, like yourself, that you're saying, no, this is actually good. We're doing good things for the earth and the environment. And so I think that it's difficult to, not difficult, but maybe a challenge to kind of look at educating the public and the general public and saying, we're actually doing something really good for the environment, and this is not something that's hurting our earth. And I think that's really cool that you reinforce that idea.
Yeah, and I want people to know that their drinking water is safe. There are a lot of regulations around how we inject the CO2, how we monitor. So it's very strictly monitored. And a lot more of that information is on the website. So I would be thrilled as people go and learn more.
Very cool. So www.projecttundra.nd.com.
Yes.
Too cool. Awesome. Well, Stacy, thank you so much for being a part of the show today. And we just really appreciate all the knowledge you shared with us and sharing more about Project Tundra.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity. So yeah, thank you.
Thanks, guys. Yep. Bye.
Take care.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Mind, America's Lignite Energy Podcast. For more information on lignite energy in North Dakota, visit lignite.com.